Here are the top stories for today, June 21, 2021. No let-up in vaccination. The country has so far administered over 8 million COVID-19 jabs. Around 5 million Filipinos have already received their first dose. The Philippines signs a deal with Pfizer for the purchase of 40 million vaccine doses. Around half of these will be allotted for children aged 12 to 15. The government's mega infrastructure program has generated over 6 million jobs. More projects are set to be completed by next year amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And the Philippine Statistics Authority partners with malls for the Step 2 registration of the Philippine Identification System. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. The Philippines has topped the 8 million mark in the number of administered COVID-19 vaccines. Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. lauds the efforts of the local government units and the private sector for doing an amazing job in ramping up the inoculation of their constituents and employees. For 2 consecutive weeks this month, the country maintained a weekly jab rate of more than 1 million per week. Galvez said the government will sustain the steady supply of vaccines expected in the coming weeks and months. Children belonging to the 12 to 15-year age bracket will be administered with the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. said half of the expected 40 million Pfizer jabs that will arrive by August will be allocated for this age group. The government on Saturday signed a supply agreement for 40 million doses of vaccines to be delivered by the 3rd and 4th quarter of 2021. Galvez said the government would start vaccinating the younger group once the expert panel gives a go signal and guidelines. With the signing of the Pfizer supply deal, Galvez is confident that the country will be able to achieve its targeted 184 million doses of COVID-19 shots before the year ends. The deal is the biggest vaccine supply agreement for this year. Meanwhile, the country is also expecting the arrival of Moderna vaccines anytime soon. Galvez said the supposed arrival of 150,000 doses of private sector procured Moderna today has been moved due to logistical challenges. Moderna vaccines require a stable temperature between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. And as for the Sinovac jabs, which are currently being administered to the priority groups, the health department said it remains effective against severe symptoms of COVID-19 and deaths from the infection. The statement comes following reports that Indonesia's more than 350 doctors have contracted COVID-19 despite being vaccinated with Sinovac. The official said the outbreak may have been driven by the more transmissible Delta variant first detected in India. Citing that there are 5,000 healthcare workers in the Indonesian hospital, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere said 350 out of the 5,000 workers would be only about 2 to 3% of the population. Health authorities have detected 4 additional cases of the more transmissible Delta variant, bringing the country's total number of Delta cases to 17. The details from Marita Moahe.
4 more individuals are infected with the Delta variant in the country. The health department says 3 of them are returning overseas Filipinos from South Korea. 2 cases have completed the 10-day isolation after arrival in the country and were discharged upon release of certification of recovery, while the other is still admitted in a hospital in Metro Manila. The 4th case is another returning Filipino who arrived from Saudi Arabia on May 24. Health authorities assured that biosurveillance activities for the detection of COVID-19 variants would continue amid the increase in cases in the Visayas and Mindanao. The health department says patients infected with the Delta variant are more likely to stay longer in hospitals compared to those who contracted the other variants. However, the disease is preventable as long as the minimum health protocols are being followed. Meanwhile, DOH Technical Advisory Group members and infectious disease expert Dr. Edsel Salvana said the Delta variant is under control as the government implemented immediate quarantine protocols. For its part, the Philippine National Police will implement strict border control to ensure that the variant will not spread, especially in areas with a high number of COVID-19 cases. PNP Chief General Guillermo Eleazar ordered the police personnel to closely coordinate with the different local government units for the strict enforcement of minimum public health safety standards and quarantine protocols. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Muaje.
Some 347 distressed Filipinos, including 5 children in the Arab countries, were repatriated via Philippine Airlines chartered flight. The repatriates received cash assistance upon their arrival in Manila. In a video message, President Duterte said he instructed the Department of Foreign Affairs to use Bayanihan 2 funds to give all repatriated OFWs 10,000 pesos each as reintegration financial assistance. As of June 18, more than 400,000 overseas Filipinos had been repatriated by the government since the start of the pandemic in March last year. Some 105,582 are seafarers, while 297,652 are land-based overseas Filipinos. Meanwhile, Filipinos in countries covered by temporary travel ban will still be allowed to return home subject to quarantine and testing protocols. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque made this clarification after announcing that the Philippines has extended the travel ban imposed on passengers coming from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, United Arab Emirates, and Oman until June 30. He said Filipinos will still be allowed to return home subject to quarantine and testing protocols. In Brazil, 500,000 COVID-19 deaths are reported and are being attributed to vaccine hesitancy. According to local health departments, only 15% of the target population is completely immunized with both doses, while 38% took only the first shot. The number of COVID-19 cases is nearly 18 million. Aside from this, Brazil is also under political turmoil, with thousands of people participating in mass demonstrations against right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro. This is said to put more people at risk of getting infected with the disease. Meanwhile, Moscow's COVID-19 cases surged by more than 50,000 cases since last week. The COVID-19 weekly death toll reached a record high since mid-March 2021, while the mortality rate remains unchanged and stands at 2.43%. The number of active cases is rapidly growing since March. Still to come, more jobs through infrastructure projects. The Build, Build, Build program generates over 6 million jobs in 4 years. And the National Police vows a relentless crackdown on high-value drug targets. Details ahead, this is the PNA Newsroom. The COVID-19 pandemic has greatly changed our lives for the worse. Lives and jobs were lost and economies reached a meltdown. Thanks to the arrival of safe and effective vaccines, we are one step closer to normalcy. It's time to do our part, get vaccinated for our safety and for our recovery.
You are there in that community, go there and have yourself vaccinated by any of the vaccines available. They are all potent, they are all effective.
I would like to appeal to all our kababayans, please get vaccinated against COVID-19 and be the government partner in preventing further spread of the disease. I encourage you to get vaccinated as soon as possible time. These vaccines are safe and they are the key to reopening our society. The need for international solidarity and cooperation cannot be made clearer than this pandemic, because everyone is safe. No one is safe globally until everybody is safe.
Vaccines work. The Department of Public Works and Highways has provided over 6 million jobs to Filipinos through the government's Build, Build, Build projects in the last 4 years. DPWH Secretary Mark Villar said the jobs offered are for engineers, construction workers, among others. Villar said for this year, they are looking to provide employment opportunities to at least 1.6 million workers. Meantime, Villar assured that the remaining civil works are being fast-tracked to open the new and modernized Estrella Pantaleon Bridge by next month. The bridge project across Pasig River linking Estrella Street in Makati City and Barangka Drive in Mandaluyong City is now at 93% complete. When completed, the bridge is expected to accommodate up to 50,000 cars daily, improving traffic in the area and decongesting EDSA. The Philippine National Police vows it will not stop until all notorious drug personalities are apprehended throughout the country. PNP Chief General Guillermo Eleazar commended Bicol Police after they seized a 1 kilogram stash of shabu worth 6.8 million pesos in Camalig, Albay last Friday. A notorious drug suspect identified as Antony Stupas was also killed in an ensuing shootout. The suspect was tagged as armed and dangerous due to his involvement in a series of illegal drug transactions in the Bicol region. Eleazar says the successful operation shows that the PNP remains relentless in its campaign against illegal drugs. Meanwhile, the Police Regional Office 5 reported that Tupas obtained his supply of drugs from a certain Malik who is currently detained at the New Bilibid prison. Eleazar said the PNP is coordinating with other agencies to put a stop to persons deprived of liberty making illegal transactions, particularly drugs, while in jail. Authorities over the weekend shut down illegal drug operations and arrested several pushers in General Santos City, Maguindanao, and Zamboanga. More on this from Leigh Cabagani.
4 people were arrested, while illegal drugs worth about 158,400 pesos were seized in separate anti-drug operations in the Zamboanga region on Friday. Alleged big-time suspect as Alger Sarmiento was arrested by Joint Police and Drug Enforcement operatives in Barangay Madaop, Ipil, Zamboanga, Sibugay. Seized from Sarmiento were some 15 grams of suspected shabu worth 102,000 pesos, along with budol and marked money. Another suspect, Karim Bannister, yielded a gram of suspected shabu worth 6,800 pesos and 300 pesos marked money in Zone 9C, Barangay Zambowood, Zamboanga City. Police recovered from suspect Ferdinand Javier some 2,000 pesos worth of suspected shabu, a coin purse, and 200 pesos marked money in San Pedro Street, Zone 1, Barangay Ayala. Meanwhile, John Lloyd Lumanta was found in possession of some 7 grams of suspected shabu worth 47,600 pesos when arrested in Barangay Sinaman, Dipolog City, Zamboanga del Norte. In Maguindanao, anti-narcotics operatives arrested 6 drug suspects, including a couple, and seized suspected shabu with an estimated street value of 136,000 pesos in an entrapment operation carried out in Sultan Kudarat town on Friday afternoon. The successful operation also led to the dismantling of a drug den in Purukuwarda, Barangay Katuli. Police identified the principal suspects as Marian Ako Buyok, who was arrested for a similar drug peddling offense in 2014, and her husband Tox Buyok. In General Santos City, authorities dismantled an alleged drug den and arrested 5 suspected drug pushers and users in a joint raid on Wednesday night. The drug den was found during a search operation in a house in KPS Zone 1, Barangay Labangal. They recovered at the scene 2 large plastic sachets containing about 6 grams of suspected shabu valued at 40,800 pesos, lighters, aluminum foil strips, a bamboo sealer, and a pair of scissors. Also arrested were live-in partners Joel Bagat and Joy Reheño, the alleged owners and maintainers of the drug den. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Laid Kabagani.
SM Mall branches nationwide will now accommodate Step 2 registration for the Philippine Identification System or Philsys. On June 14, officials of the Philippine Statistics Authority and SM Prime Holdings Incorporated signed a memorandum of understanding to provide registration sites at SM malls nationwide. Step 2 involves the registration of biometrics such as iris and fingerprint scanning and front-facing photographs. To date, 226 cities and municipalities are already open for online bookings of appointment for Step 2. In Bulacan, the PSA has partnered with SM City Baliwag to accommodate Step 2 registration for Philsys. Mall Information Officer Nika Cunanan said, all registrants with appointment slips or application reference number and notified by PSA via text message may proceed to the Philsys Registration Center located at the Cyber Zone area. Philsys Step 2 registration at SM City Baliwag will last for a year and target to accommodate at least 250 registrants per day. Meanwhile, the PSA is yet to announce the starting date of the Philsys Step 2 registration at SM Center Pulilan, one of its assigned registration centers in the 1st District of Bulacan. Up next, look who's talking. An IP leader says the NPA terrorists are the real human rights violators. And Lawag City showcases products made from malunggay through a festival. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom. You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Members of the New People's Army destroyed a prawn farm in Malimono, Surigao del Norte after its owners allegedly refused to give in to their extortion demand. Police said NPA rebels opened the water gates of a prawn farm on Saturday in Purok 1, Barangay Pili. They headed towards a mountainous portion of Barangay Pili after seeing the destruction. Provincial Police Chief Colonel Noel Espinosa said some 8.5 million pesos worth of cultured prawns were destroyed. Police Regional Office Caraga Director Brigadier General Romeo Karamat Jr. said in a separate statement they are already pursuing the rebels. He said the destruction of the farm was another desperate move of the NPA following the surrender of their former members and supporters. He also reminded business operators in the Caraga region not to give in to extortion demands. Leaders of indigenous peoples warned their members not to fall victim to the recruitment of the so-called Bakwit schools and their affiliates run by communist terrorist groups such as the CPP and PANDF. Datu Lipatuan Joel Unad, chairperson of the Mindanao Indigenous Peoples Council of Elders and Leaders, condemned the CPP and PANDF as the real human rights and international humanitarian law violators. He cited an encounter on June 16 that resulted in the death of 3 Manobos, one of them a 12-year-old student of the Red-sponsored Tribal Filipino program of Surigao del Sur, or TRIPS. Unad said the continuous recruitment of the Manobo youth in Lianga, Surigao del Sur resulted in the demise of IP communities. He called on the IPs of Mindanao to expose and oppose the organizations, training camps, and schools supporting communist terrorists. Volunteers and local officials in Angeles City joined hands to plant at least 1,000 tree seedlings at the Angeles City watershed in Barangay Sapangbato. Dubbed as Bayanihan sa Tubig Kanlungan, the tree planting activity is a rehabilitation project for the watershed conducted in partnership with Abacan River Angeles Watershed Advocacy Council. Mayor Carmelo Lasatin Jr. said the city government remains committed to pushing for the protection and preservation of the environment. Last January, Lasatin asked the Basis Conversion and Development Authority to entrust the city management of its land in Barangay Sapang Bato so it can be transformed into a protected forest park and watershed. Meanwhile, City Environment and Natural Resources Officer in charge Archimedes Lasatin said the series of tree planting activities will be done until August this year, citing this as long-term sustainable advocacy of the city government. The Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, has extended 1.29 million pesos worth of projects to parents of child workers in Capiz to help put an end to child labor. The projects are funded under the DOLE's Integrated Livelihood and Emergency Employment Program. This year, they have provided livelihood support to 72 parents, while proposals for 27 more recipients are pending. These included the agricultural supply store in Barangay Bula in Mambusao Town, the livelihood projects such as a fishing boat, sari-sari store, and rice retailing in Barangay Punta Cogon, Rojas City. Also, in observance of World Day Against Child Labor on June 12, profiled child laborers from selected barangays received school supply kits from DOLE under its project Angel Tree. Since 2018, they have profiled over 4,700 child laborers in the province. In Laoag City, residents are promoting the planting, consumption, and use of the moringa or malunggay tree, also known locally as marunggay. The city launched its first ever Marunggay Festival on Saturday. City officials, led by Mayor Michael Kion, held a simultaneous marunggay planting activity in the 80 barangays of Laoag, where they planted over 4,000 seedlings. Residents also joined a cooking competition where introduced their unique and healthy dishes with marunggay as the main ingredient. Marunggay is enjoyed by many as a superfood rich in nutrients and a versatile ingredient as a vegetable dish. Governor Matthew Joseph Manotoc said he looks forward to seeing marunggay as a commercial crop and not just as a backyard plant of the Ilocanos. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. No let-up in vaccination. The country has so far administered over 8 million COVID-19 jabs. Around 5 million Filipinos have already received their first dose. The Philippines signs a deal with Pfizer for the purchase of 40 million vaccine doses. Around half of these will be allotted for children aged 12 to 15. The government's mega infrastructure program has generated over 6 million jobs. More projects are set to be completed by next year amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And the Philippine Statistics Authority partners with malls for the Step 2 registration of the Philippine Identification System. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know from the PNA Newsroom. We tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day.